Do you have one of these brush pens? Chances are you're not using it to their full potential. With a single stroke, you can create wet or dry textures, bold or delicate lines, smooth gradients, and even sharp lettering. In this video, I'll show you 2 full demos using these brush pens, showcasing one of my favorite places in the world, Japan. If you've been wanting to master the brush pens, or you're just starting out, this is the video for you. Hello, my name is Puig. Today I'm gonna do an unboxing and a demo using these PENTEL Brushpens. These are one of my favorite tools for drafting or doing quick sketches. There are 2 types that I use for these PENTEL Brushpens. The one I'll be talking about today are the ones that are soluble with water. To know which are soluble with water and which are not, we can check the label here. The ones that are silver and say like the color and number over here. These are the ones that are soluble with water. So I'll be unboxing and talking about these ones today. The other type of PENTEL brush pens, which are permanent, if you want to work, for example, with watercolor over them, you can use these ones. But I won't be talking about these guys today. There are many colors from these brush pens. We have all these colors here. The one I have used for a while is this one, the one that says black and 101. These brush pens are made in Japan. They were originally made for Japanese calligraphy, like kanji or writing. They've become really popular among artists. 2 artists that I really like that use them are Kim Yoongi, a Korean artist that passed away 2 years ago. He's one of my favorite artists and one of my biggest influences, and he's the reason I started using these brush pens. Another artist I really recommend that uses these brush pens is Karl Kopinski. These brush pens are not really easy to use if you're a beginner artist because they are pretty versatile. You can do really thin lines and you can do really thick lines. It's like trying to draw with a brush. So it takes time to understand them and being good at them. A lot of manga artists use them. I really like using them for like quick landscapes. When you mix them with water, you can do a lot of like washes and really cool effects. These PENTEL brush pens are made in Japan and they imitate a traditional Japanese tool, which are these type of brushes for calligraphy. Another tool I really like using with these brush pens are these brushes that you add water to the barrel. PENTEL also make them, and the way I use both the PENTEL brush pens and the ones with water are the following. I'm gonna do a line here, and then using the water from this other brush, I'm gonna dilute this line and create a gradient. The cool thing about this brush is I have some ink on this brush, and this ink now looks gray because it's diluted with water. We can keep grabbing the black ink and just expanding it and doing these effects around. So really versatile. I love all the water effects you can create with these brushes. By the way, I'm using mixed media paper. If you want a better paper, you can use watercolor paper too. It really works well with this ink. With these brush pens, we can make really thin lines, and we can also make really thick lines. So I'm gonna do an example with this. It's a really thin line, and we can make thick lines or go even thicker. And we can also get some texture along the way. We can get any texture in between. And then if we add a little bit of water, we can dilute them and create these effects. This is the reason I really love these brushes. I love the way these effects look. They're really versatile, and you can wait for it to dry and draw above it, or just try and create wet on wet effects here. Another effect I really like using with these brushes are the wet on wet effects. So for this, I'm gonna squeeze the barrel, wet the paper a little bit, and then using the PENTEL brush pen, we can create these sort of effects. I think they look amazing. So like I was saying, and I keep saying, these brushes are extremely versatile. For this first demo, I'm only gonna use the black one. For the second one, I'll be using more colors. I'll be using this photo. I took this photo on my last trip to Japan. I did the drawing already, and I erased most of it using this kneaded eraser. So I have a transparent background. We can start with our drawing, but for demo reasons, I find it easier to already have the drawing here on the paper. So let's start. The first thing that I like doing is drawing really thin lines, and then I will add value with the other brush pen that I talk a little bit, the water brush pen, whatever it's called. When I draw with these brush pens, I feel like it's almost a meditative process, because you really have to focus on what you're doing. When you draw with a pencil, you know you can always erase, but when we use these brush pens, we have to really focus our attention in what we're doing, so we get thin or thick lines depending on what we need. Here I did a thicker line because if we look at the reference, there's some shadow here. So that's the thing I was saying. We can vary our weight line, and in this case, I'm doing thicker lines where I see shadow on the reference. Where I don't see any shadow, I just do thin lines. It's better to do a thin line and then come over and do a thicker line, because if we do a thicker line and then we want it to thin that line, we can't do it. Here are the steps that lead into our temple. I love drawing Japanese architecture. Really, really thin lines for the steps. This is the thing I really love about these brush pens. Look at how thin we can do some lines here. Whenever I use the brush pen, I always move the brush pen around and rotate it so I can make these lines easier. It's hard on certain angles, especially right now that I'm explaining and I can't really move my paper around. I'm trying to find ways that I can move my hands so I can create easier lines. If you move your hand really fast with the brush pen, it starts creating this sort of texture. So if you want really thick and consistent lines, you have to move your hand slower. Once we start adding value, we will gain more depth in our drawing painting, but that is something I'm postponing at the moment. That we'll do at some point. Really, really thin lines here for these details. It doesn't matter if some lines are not perfectly straight. I feel like it adds character if they're like a little bit wobbly. Here, there's some foliage and some branches. The thing I really like about this brush is we can like create really abstract details in a manner like if we're painting. So I'm gonna do them that way, like a little bit, not surreal, but like just abstract. We just have to convey the feeling that these are some branches. This part on my reference photo, it's really dark, so we can start blocking in these really dark values. We just have to be careful. I'm gonna add thicker lines here. The windows on my reference picture are really dark too, so maybe we can start adding them now, maybe. Let's the floor here. Some wooden planks. I'm missing the rails here. Okay, so I think I'm ready to start adding a little value to help the drawing. I'm gonna use this brush pen. So there's a thick line here, and then I'm gonna push the value up. The wall here, it's pretty dark because it's like on the shadow, so I'm gonna start adding some value there. Underneath the roof, we also have a lot of shadow. The light doesn't get there. Something I really love, and I do a lot when adding value, it's I take my water brush, and then I take some ink from my brush pen and add value. So this is a really good way to get some in-between values, like gray in this case. I just keep adding mid values and I keep grabbing ink. With watercolor, there's a technique called layering, which is like once some part of your painting is dry, you can keep adding like layers and make it darker. So that's something really nice we can do with this technique. I can do the same thing, like work transparently and add layers. There's like some bush over here, so I'm doing the silhouette, and then we have more branches. I'm gonna keep this part pretty abstract. I don't want to go into detail. There's also some foliage over here. There's a lot of lines on the roof. For this second demo, I'll be doing this illustration. It is also inspired in Japanese style and like Japanese waves with a koi fish. And I added like a little bit of like a psychedelic inspiration into it. So let's see how it works with these Pentel pen brushes. For this second illustration, I'll be using black, the same I used for the first illustration. I'll be using gray, the same I used for the first illustration. And I'll be adding these three colors: orange, yellow orange, and brown for the shadows of the orange. Okay, so let's start with the illustration. For the first part, I'll be doing a lot of the line work before filling up different parts of the illustration. The reason I want to do the line work is to try and understand the different, like, I want to convey depth. So the first thing I'm gonna try and do is first work with the line work and then add a little bit of the color and the gradients. So the first step will be to start adding the line work. Then once we have some line work, I can start adding more detail and more depth. So for clarity reasons, I'm gonna start with line work. So let's get into it. That effect is something that could help us out, but if we don't really know what is going on, it can ruin our work. So we have to be careful. I like to start with thin lines, and then if the illustration requires a thicker line, I will redraw that line thicker instead of just like doing thick lines at the start. So now that I have almost all the line work on the foreground, I'm gonna start adding a little bit of color to the fish so I can have a comparison to see where this is going. I'm gonna start with the light orange, and then as needed, I will be adding more of this orange and even some brown for like the shadows. Here I'm trying to get some like texture for the scales. Now I'm gonna add more the orange. What I'm trying to do is fill out this whole part of the gray, and I can do that using the gray or the black with the water brush. If I need more, I can always grab directly from the brush. I always recycle the color that I already used. Like here, I'm grabbing from this black over here, and then I'm using it as a gray down here. Here I'm still filling up all the background with gray. I want to get rid of all the white. So that's what I'm currently doing. The only white that I'm planning to leave on the paper might be the white of the waves. Maybe white on the koi fish, still don't know. I like to work this sort of illustration in a manner of as if they were layers. So I'm layering color, and that way I can approach. It's an easier way to approach something complex. I'm trying to give these waves a little bit more of three-dimensionality. The next thing I'm gonna do is create some lines with a ruler so I can appreciate more the composition. So let's do that. I could do it with the brush pen, but I don't know, too risky. For the lines, I'll be using this Copic multi-liner and this Japanese Statler ruler that I really love. So let's do the frame. And this is the end result of the illustrations. Did you like them? Did you learn anything about them? Let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them down below. If you want to see more of these Pentel brushes, subscribe. There will be more content coming down the way. I'll see you next time.